Today, the 3rd of May, marks World Press Freedom Day. And in a time of rapid growth, the role of AI and innovation also continues to impact the journalist and media landscape at large. This day, of course, follows Freedom Day in South Africa, observed on the 27th of April, where, amongst other democratic rights, press freedom was a hard-fought for freedom and right that remains pivotal over 30 years into our democracy, and perhaps also since it was declared by the UN General Assembly at large. And so Sbu Ngalwa, Acting Secretary General at the African Editors Forum, weighs in for more. Sbu, good morning on that note, and thank you for making time to chat on this pertinent issue.
Thank you for having me, Lizzo.
So obviously, given this juncture, the opportunities and challenges, they're rife. This ever-evolving landscape, the importance of it as well for South Africa, for the continent, lots of things coming to the fore. Tell us a little bit more about your observations, given the day that we're observing.
Thank you, Lizzo. Obviously, every year we observe World Press Freedom Day, and every year there is a theme. And this year's theme is the impact of artificial intelligence on press freedom and the media. It's a UNESCO theme, which is about reporting the news in a brave new world. So I think as the South African National Editors Forum and also the African Editors Forum, in all of our platforms and all of our events for this year, AI features quite strongly. In fact, we will have the Africa Media Convention, which will meet in Marrakesh, Morocco at the end of this month. And that entire conference, I would say 70% of it is about the impact of AI. Obviously, we have an industry, Lizzo, that has been plagued by a number of issues. We were late to catch up to the digital transformation. We've got issues of financial pressure on media companies and dwindling resources, really, and now enter AI. So we do note that AI does have its advantages. It's good for journalism. In fact, in terms of automating some of the manual functions that would ordinarily require human intervention. Issues like sometimes they are headline writing, which still need to be overseen by a media professional. There are tools that we can use for investigative journalism. Now you can take the whole data set, thousands of pages of data, and put it into an AI tool, and it can be able to whittle it down and help you use that information quickly and more effectively. But we're also mindful, Lisa, of the negative impact that it has on the industry, because obviously we do see a lot of misinformation and disinformation that originates from AI. There are issues of deep fake technology, but also there's also the threat that it poses to the business model of the media, and how also AI companies and tech companies are using journalistic content to treat their language learning models and machines without actually compensating journalists for doing that work.
Yeah, absolutely, Sbu. And it's also about maintaining or reinstilling public trust and upholding democratic ideals, which become very important. And so on the back of, how the theme is centered around AI's impact and perhaps the new risks and the opportunities associated as well, I wonder if we could just speak to the role of journalists at large. Obviously, just looking at disseminating information, but their relevance for now and for future generations as well.
Thank you for that, Liesl. The reality is that without journalism, without the media, we cannot have democracy. Journalism is the cornerstone of human rights, and also journalism is a cornerstone of democracy. And for democracies to be, obviously, you understand that the basic principle of democracy is that of being transparent and also accountable. And it is the media, independent media, that holds power to account. So in any society, especially now that we're seeing the rise in AI and also everyone who has a cell phone think they are a journalist, there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation, and some of it is deliberate, and it's meant to destabilize societies. It's intended to destabilize communities. We've seen post-election violence in countries like Kenya, in some other parts of the world, and also even in the United States. The storming of the Capitol was not a spontaneous event. It had been built through deliberate disinformation. So you need a strong, independent, and a robust media that is able to, one, fact check, but two, to be able to give the facts for what they are in an objective manner, because journalists are still held to journalistic principles and standards. And they still ascribe and subscribe to the press code, which actually guides us in how we treat information and also for what to avoid. Now, anybody else who's got a cell phone does not have to subscribe to that. So society ought to understand that in as much as they may say we get our news from social media and other platforms, there is still a need, especially at this time where there's a lot of information and it's very difficult to tell what is true and what is not. So without independent media, there's no democracy.
And so, Sbu, how do you then respond to the modes of consumption that's obviously shifting and even funding models that come to the fore? Because there have been perceptions about how, media is partisan. They're also driving paid-for narratives. Tell us how that also is featured during press freedom and independence as well.
So the issue of media sustainability is one that concerns us greatly. And obviously it is an issue we're grappling with every day as journalists the world over. Yeah. But the reality is that consumption patterns have changed and the media has to move with the times. No one is saying that people must go and buy newspapers on a cold morning like today when you can subscribe digitally. But the point here is that it has to be an understanding of the important role of the media in this at this particular juncture. But also, media companies are evolving. That is why, in as much as we have artificial intelligence, we're embracing AI, but we're saying that AI should be for good, and we should be mindful of AI's impact on the industry. But where there are concerns, particularly around the issue of the use of journalistic content to teach the language learning models without compensating the media, that is actually wrong. But that's not AI. That's me. That's AI. Those are tech companies that are developing the artificial intelligence. Yes, people will read from their cell phones. They will access it from other platforms. But it's also important to understand the important role that is played by the media. That the media is still your source of reference. The media is still held to journalistic standards and ethics, unlike everybody else who's got a cell phone.
And so the state of media at large, what is your assessment, just as we wrap up, the state of press freedom around the world? There's incidences emerging from Gaza, from the Ukraine, from the United States of America. Talk to us about what we're celebrating or what we're not celebrating in terms of freedom, and even if we're going to be paying tribute to journalists that have lost their lives in the line of duty. How do we do that effectively?
So, Lizel, as I speak to you, researchers, Journalists Without Borders actually release a World Press Freedom Index every year. And I must say that South Africa has improved. And now it's number 1 in Africa. It's now sitting at number 27 out of 180 countries that were assessed. That's quite a great improvement because last year we were sitting at number 38. Now we're sitting at number 27. That actually talks to an improved environment in South Africa. So it's just something we must celebrate, because here we can criticize the president, we can release statements being critical of his office and nothing happens. So that's something we do not take for granted in terms of the strength of our democracy. But we do have concerns about in other countries around the world and also on the continent. One case being that of the Burkina Faso. General or brigadier or the military leader, Ibrahim Traore, is being celebrated as this Pan-Africanist, but there are press freedom there's press freedom repression in that country. They are just now, even now, as the African Editors Forum issued a statement last week reflecting the fact that we've got 3 colleagues that were bundled up by the military and forced to join the military just for being critical of the president. So those are some of the concerns that we have. Obviously, the situation in Gaza is one that is concerning to us, the unprecedented number of journalists and media workers that have been killed than any other conflict around the world. So journalism is still a dangerous job. But what we are saying and what everyone ought to understand is that journalism is not a crime. No journalist should be repressed or thrown in jail just because they're doing their job.
All right, Sbu, thank you for those words. Of course, the conversation continues as the day is observed, and perhaps also those in the field continue to practice. Thank you again for joining us at this hour. Sbu Ngalwa, Acting Secretary General, African Editors Forum, chatting all things press freedom, of course, as we observe World Press Freedom Day. It's observed on the 3rd of May, as declared by the UN General Assembly back in 1993.